Let's take another look at aldehyde and ketone nomenclature. And there are some common names that you're expected to know for Chemistry 3111. So some common aldehydes are formaldehyde, acetaldehyde, and benzaldehyde. So these are just some common ones that we expect you to know. So formaldehyde is a preservative that's used in a lot of vaccines, and there's various and sundry things it's used to preserve. And then acetaldehyde, if you think acid, you always think of acetone. So acetaldehyde, it looks like that. And benzaldehyde is one that we should all know by now because we learned it during the last chapter where we talked about electrophilic aromatic substitution. And there's also a few common ketones that you're supposed to know. So acetone, I imagine that most people know the structure of acetone by now, CH3, C double bond O, CH3. Acetophenone, you can think of that as being related to acetaldehyde, so because it has the aceto group on it. So acetophenone looks something like this, where we have our phenyl group, and then we have our acetyl group over here. And then benzophenone is where we have two benzene rings linked by a carbonyl group like that. So let's take a look. So again, you're expected to know these kinds of common names, and Klein goes into these in a little bit more detail. So let's take a look at a couple more examples. I just have three that I came up with right here. So if we take a look at this first example here, we'll call this one A. So if we took a look at example A, we have a carbon chain that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. So if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can see that it's a ketone, and a ketone takes precedence over an alkyl or an alkene or a hydroxyl group. So the ketone's going to take order of precedence. And since we have a 6 carbon chain, so that would be a hexane, but since we have a ketone at carbon 3, that's going to be a 3-hexanone or hexane 3-one. So we'll call that hexane 3-one. That's the way I like to name them. I like to put the number before the suffix. And then we have 5-hydroxy, so it's going to be 5-hydroxy. So 5-hydroxy. So if we put our two things together, the final name of our compound should be 5-hydroxy, 3-hexanone. And you can see that I just switched the numbering there. Again, you could call it, if you said 5-hydroxy hexane 3-one, I would mark that correct too. So this is just another way of doing it. Some people like to put the locant before the suffix. Some people like to put it before. So I like to mix them around once in a while. So let's take a look at the next one. So you can see that this one is an aldehyde. So and this one has 1, 2, 3, 4 carbons in the longest chain that contains the aldehyde in it. So again, we don't have to put a locant for aldehyde because it is assumed that the aldehyde is at carbon 1. So this is going to be a butanal. So butanal. That's pretty easy. And you can see that on the third carbon we have a phenyl group. So that's 3-phenyl. 3-phenyl, and there's nothing else to consider. So the final name of our compound will be 3-phenyl butanal. 3-phenyl butanal. So that one's not too bad either. So let's take a look at this last one. And if you remember, I think I mentioned on one of my other nomenclature videos that when you have a cyclic compound that has an aldehyde on it, so let me just switch back to my red pen here. When we have a cyclic compound with an aldehyde on it, that's going to be a carb aldehyde. So you can see that this is a 6-membered ring, so this is going to be some kind of cyclohexane carb aldehyde. But we have this methoxy group over here. So if we number our carbons starting with the aldehyde as being carbon 1, that means the carbon containing the methoxy group on it is going to be carbon 2. So an easy way to name this compound, I think, would be to call it trans, since we have the methoxy group going up and then we have the aldehyde going down. So trans 2-methoxy cyclohexane carb aldehyde. That's a long name. So trans 2-methoxy cyclohexane carb aldehyde. So that's a pretty complicated one. And you could call this RR if you were to name it this enantiomer, but I would accept this name, trans 2-methoxy cyclohexane carb aldehyde. So I hope this helps you a little bit more as you explore common names for ketones and aldehydes and as you look a little bit deeper into nomenclature.